We have Delia Yarrow, who is here. She is the Director of Homeownership at Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services, or INS. And she's got a lot to share, so I am not going to belabor this introduction other than to say we're very, very grateful to have you here with us. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Definitely please eat those brownie bites because, you know, it's Sunday morning. It's a good time for sugar, so don't let me stop you on that. My name is Delia Yarrow, as Bonnie said, and I have been with INHS for 14 years. I'm a native Ithacan, grew up on Hancock Street across from our wonderful DMV. And I started my career in New York City and then moved back here because honestly I couldn't find an affordable place to stay in New York City. And I thought, all right, well, maybe if I come home, I'll be able to land somewhere solid. And I finally have. I was digging a ditch at my house this morning, so my hair is wet because I showered for you guys. I'm happy to have landed here and now had a 14-year career at INHS. And so when you all reached out to talk about affordable housing, I was delighted. I'm always happy to talk about the topic. Before I sort of get started about the history of INHS and what we've seen kind of shift in the last couple of years, especially since COVID, I'm wondering if folks have specific questions for me so I can kind of weave that in before I start talking. You want me to just launch into it, and then feel free to interrupt me at any point and ask questions. I'll try my best not to use jargon, but if I start using words that aren't familiar to you, just raise your hand and interrupt me. I'm happy to have that happen. So INHS is a 50-year-old housing nonprofit. We just hit our 50 years this year, which is really exciting. We started on the south side of Ithaca in fixing up houses for homeowners where they have been prevented from accessing capital. Some of you may know about redlining, but that was a sort of banking, started with the federal government actually, a banking thing that happened for many, many years where many neighborhoods that weren't white were sort of locked out of mortgage lending, both for purchases of homes and repairs of homes. Ithaca was too small to have an actual red line map, but there were neighborhoods where folks had harder time accessing capital for repairs. And so when INHS started our work, we started with repair work, and then we started very quickly lending. So we were helping folks buy houses by the late 70s, early 80s. And we've been doing that steadily for the last 50 years. So we help people with down payment assistance, and that means if somebody's a low-income home buyer trying to qualify and they can't come up with the money for closing costs plus down payment, INHS will help them with a loan or a forgivable loan lien to take care of that barrier to home ownership. We do education classes, we do a home inspection class. For post-purchase, we talk to people about maintenance in their homes, wills and estates, selling your home. We had a class recently on tax exemptions for seniors and folks with disabilities. So we try to listen to the community and figure out what folks need, identify needs, and then find a way to kind of serve them. So we've been doing this steady work with homeowners. We also have a minor repair program, which I oversee, that helps primarily senior homeowners with small things. So we do grab bars to let folks get out of rehabs and hospitals on an emergency basis. And we've just found funding to do that regardless of income, because we had a lot of calls from desperate family members saying, you know, my mom, my aunt can't get out of rehab because they need a Comfort Height toilet and some grab bars. And so we will install those regardless. Most of the folks we serve with that program are receiving Social Security of about $1,000 a month, which doesn't leave you with any squidgy room to deal with in your budget to deal with any kind of repair issues that come up. So we're doing a lot of health and safety work, fixing steps and electrical outlets and that kind of stuff. When we have the funding, we install ramps for folks, walk-in showers. This fall, the funding for heating systems was unavailable for a while, so we figured out how to partner with a couple of HVAC companies and get new heating systems installed for seniors. So we, again, are always aware that there are steady needs that have been there. Steps rot, folks need qualified handy persons to take care of those steps. So we, some things remain steady, and then sometimes a whole program goes away, and we sort of try to respond and meet that need. So that's broad brush of what INHS does in terms of helping home buyers. And then we also have a bunch of other departments that are serving renters. So INHS builds rental housing on Hancock Street, where I grew up. We built a big complex on the north side where the PNC used to be. So now you know I'm a native because I talk about where things used to be. We built that building across from DeWitt Mall, where the Women's Service League thrift store used to be, for all of us that likes the used to be's. And some projects on the west side of Ithaca, on the south side of Ithaca, and we have rental projects now in 4 counties. So INHS serves Tompkins County and then the surrounding 6 counties. We just leased up one north of here in the village of Cayuga in Cayuga County. That was the first rental property we've done in Cayuga County. So that's really exciting. And we have INHS manages everything that we build, and we are very committed to making sure that those communities are built to a really high green standard that, I always joke, having been a renter in New York, that good walls make good neighbors. So we're trying to build solid houses that are going to last to a green standard where people can live without annoying their neighbors because they're really good, solid buildings, and you don't hear the pitter-patter of little feet at 5 a.m. when they get up, So the property management and maintenance staff at INHS are just phenomenal. They really care. The rental housing that we have is under a lot of restrictions because we take government funding and then we have to follow all the rules. So in terms of helping people move into rental property, we have to ask for documents and check them and make sure we have explanations for everything. So it's a lot of work to kind of move someone in, but what happens with INHS's affordable rental housing is folks tend to stay. They're good, solid communities and buildings. The building that we built across from DeWitt Mall, we opened it in 2014 or 15, I think. I was pregnant, or my daughter was just born, and folks have aged in place there. So now we have it's a mixed age community, but a lot of seniors in that building because people just stayed, where they were, the vibe, and just stayed in the building. And I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of how INHS maintains the buildings and how we work with folks. We have seen since COVID that across the communities that we're serving, folks' needs have really increased. And we responded to that by hiring a social worker. Now we actually have 1.5 full-time equivalent social workers, one working in Cayuga County and one working in Tompkins County. We have a 700 unit plus portfolio of rental housing, and so those social workers are really supporting folks. I know from my work on the homeownership side that when someone gets dementia or their health is really declining, unless they have a wonderful support system like a church community to kind of keep people in balance, things can go off the rails. And so part of what INHS is doing in having resident services is trying to prevent crises from happening so that people can stay safe in their homes, and then dealing with things as they come up, being sort of a support and connected person there for our residents. So I'm really proud of INHS making the commitment to do that. We got a little bit of foundation funding, but of course there's never enough for a full salary ongoing, right? This past week, folks may have heard that the Asteri building in downtown Ithaca had a huge crisis, and folks have been moved out. We don't own that building, nor do we manage it, nor do we have any formal role. I want to say very clearly, we've been trying to work with the city and the owners prior to this to prevent this from happening, but we are not in control of that situation. My boss, Kate, isn't here today actually because Kate was up all night, several nights, trying to figure out how we could get folks who are being displaced from Asteri into our vacant units, how to get people to hotels. We've been delivering supplies and kind of working with the folks on the ground that are actually trying to help that situation. So it's been quite a week. And it doesn't look like, as far as I've heard so far, that that's gonna resolve quickly, which means there's 181 households of folks who are, potentially losing their homes, and we don't know for how long. And, we all know that Tompkins County is pretty small. There's not 181 hotel rooms available to folks, especially because a lot of people have pets. Makes that complicated. Not every hotel is accessible. Not everybody has a car. That was a very downtown property. So I just want to name that in addition to the sort of larger picture, we're in a crisis right now that we haven't seen before. This hasn't happened. This hasn't happened with any of INHS's rental properties, because we really are committed to serving the communities that we're in, where that's a company that's based several states away. And so they're not here to triage the problems in the same way that they need to be. So it's been a terrible week. And I just wanted to kind of name that. If folks had heard about this situation, it is as bad as you have heard in the news. It's really terrible, and I wish I knew enough about, are people going to be able to move back in? If so, when, etc. I know the city has been doing some work. Some of the legislators from Tompkins County have been down at the library kind of trying to talk to people, but we all understand that in a crisis, there are so many needs, and if folks are on very little to no income, transportation is an issue. You lose your kitchen, then food becomes an issue. You're sort of on the edge in terms of mental health or recovery, then like the stress of moving and being in a strange place is a huge thing. So the situation that's happening now with the residents at Asteri is something that, I would just say is breaking our hearts, and we're trying to respond to as best as we can by housing as many people as we can, and sort of bringing together the housing providers that may have units, getting them to have staff at the library so folks can apply for other places to go if this situation doesn't resolve itself in terms of the owner doing the repairs that they should be doing. So, yeah. Bad week. It's been a bad week. But balanced out on that bad week, because there are always things that balance it. I've been watching folks come to the library with food, with rides, offering car seats, really like a community effort to fulfill needs that are kind of beyond what the standard bureaucratic measures of dealing with a crisis are. And it makes me feel like it felt to be in New York when I was there on 9/11, when I was there with Hurricane Sandy, when there's a crisis that's sort of big and you just watch people give up their weekends and their evenings and buy stuff out of their pockets. It's moving in that the crisis isn't solved, but it's moving to see people try to step in and make it less bad for our neighbors. So, Kate's been burning the candle at both ends, and I appreciate working for someone who cares. This isn't technically, something that INHS would need to step in on, but that's the kind of organization we are. We work hard. We care about the community beyond the folks that we are, legally obligated to serve, and we do our very best to kind of step in when there's a crisis of a magnitude like this. So I just wanted to talk about that, because I know there have been news stories, and I would love to be able to tell you I know exactly where we are in that process, but I probably know about as much as you do about what the owner is doing in response to the repair needs and getting folks housed. I do know they were not providing legal transportation and food stipends, so they were like, we don't have hotel rooms. Shrug, so there's been a lot of pushing behind the scenes to try to get them to step up and do what they're legally obligated to do when there's a crisis and folks can no longer be in their apartments, and get them to stop shrugging and start doing. So we'll hope that pressure continues and somebody steps up to really get folks back in their homes and stabilize that building. Okay, talked about some of the major things. Then I'll tell you a couple of other interesting stories that have happened in the last 5 years. INHS bought a manufactured home community. So I grew up here. I didn't know that there were 44 manufactured home communities in Tompkins County alone. That's a lot. And we don't always see them. It's usually just a driveway going off. Sometimes you can see homes next to the road, but a lot of times they're tucked away and tucked back, kind of out of sight. So there's a huge manufactured home community in the village of Trumansburg, just north of downtown. If you're going past the fire station, you take a left. There's 151 pads. That manufactured home community had been owned by a single owner who was not the kind of person who followed laws, so sort of charged different rents for different, did not maintain the roads. He needed to do a lot of septic and sewer work, so we were able to purchase the community and leverage a new pot of New York State funding to upgrade the water and sewer lines, redo the roads, redo the lighting and the mailboxes, and kind of make that community stable and a good place to live in terms of what is there. What we have realized in the process of managing that community for the last 6 years is, a lot of the older manufactured homes have a lifespan, and some of the homes in that community are beyond, let's say, their usable lifespan. We've started to figure out how to replace homes with New York State funding. We're working on a new project to site new homes in the community, so to make that be an option for people who are looking to purchase a brand new home. The HUD code has been updated quite a bit, so the manufactured homes that we might call trailers that were built in the 70s with asbestos and pretty low quality standards, I would say, are not the homes that are being built now. And INHS is working to purchase and working with home manufacturers, say those words three times fast, to try to make sure that we're getting quality housing that will last when we're purchasing new homes for folks. So that's been really kind of an exciting thing to learn about in the last 5 years. How do we do this major infrastructure project? How do we figure out lending in manufactured home communities? You can't get a traditional mortgage under most circumstances. They're usually the loans that folks are getting to buy a manufactured home are like credit card, 14-18% rate. And we're working with local lenders and with New York State to find options that are more affordable for folks for the long term, because manufactured home communities are, shall we call them, naturally occurring affordable housing. Your sort of lot rent instead of taxes and insurance is much, much lower than it would be if you owned your own home on a piece of land. And that means that there's an opportunity there if folks can create a community with good infrastructure and then find good homes. There's an opportunity to create manufactured housing in a situation where the market has, more than doubled in Tompkins County since 2018. We used to be helping over 100 households a year buy, and now we're down to like 35. So we've seen a 70% decrease in the number of people that we can help purchase. And, a lot of those folks are purchasing in Chemung County near Elmira, commuting up to Tompkins because Tompkins isn't affordable. So the whole sort of landscape of what's available for folks to buy has changed in our region, but not just in our region. I'm sure if anybody in this room has thought about buying in the last 5 years, you've looked at the prices and been shocked if you have family members in other parts of the country that are looking. The market has changed everywhere. And that's really difficult for folks who are low to moderate income. It means that cash sales, that folks that are making, have a ton of money in assets or access to family wealth are able to sort of beat out any teachers, aides, bus drivers, anybody that we might think of that traditionally would have a job stable enough to be able to buy a house. Like now on the open market, it's gotten really rough. So INHS has a program that we've been doing for 10 years now called a community housing trust. It's a shared equity appreciation model of homeownership. And we started doing this when we saw that the homes that we put $100,000 into on the south side of Ithaca to sell affordably and bring up to a good standard were, upon the next resale, selling at an unaffordable price. And our former executive director, Paul Mazzarella, said, how can we put $100,000 in and then basically that money goes to one family? That feels like a misuse of staff time, effort, government funds. And so started to think through a land trust model, which means there's a permanent restriction on appreciation for the home buyers in return. We worked really hard to get a state law passed for Tompkins County. That means folks are taxed on the resale value of their home and not the market value. So we have 88 units in that community housing trust. Every time there's been a resale, it's gone really quick because people are very interested in purchasing a house. This year we have 14 houses that are under contract and in the process of closing. Hopefully we'll all close by the end of the month. 10 in Trumansburg, like back behind the high school, basically, near a rental project that we did, and 4 in downtown Ithaca. Those houses, folks are gonna pay, so they're selling now between like 160 and 190. Folks are gonna pay taxes on those resale values, so they'll go up over time. But when we talk to the county assessor about what is the market taxes if those houses weren't restricted, they would have been between $350,000 and $400,000 for a new townhome or a new, just, and they're really modest square footages. We're talking 1,000 to 1,300. This isn't a McMansion by any means, but it's a really nice layout, and I think the architects that we work with to do the houses are smart about space. So there's not a ton of space, but it's all usable space. They don't waste space in the house, and we try to make sure there's storage there so folks are really able to feel like this is my house, I have what I need, and live comfortably in those homes. So that structure of the ground lease with the permanent restrictions is allowing INHS to do some creation of affordable housing beyond this manufactured housing that we're doing on a small basis right now in Trumansburg, and continue to provide homeownership opportunities for folks. But the New York State funding is no longer kind of keeping up with the gap between what it costs us to build a house and what we can sell a house for. So we actually had a project that we were working towards in Lansing, right over there, very close by, that would have been 16 units, and we couldn't move it forward because we didn't have enough money in subsidy to make that project feasible. So the future of our ability to create homeownership to kind of opportunities through our community housing trust to meet the needs of home buyers is, let's say, stalling, and we're trying to pivot and figure out, what are the other ways we continue to help people. We're doing a strategic planning process this year, so we're going to be sort of exploring what the opportunities are to continue to work with people. One thing I will say about INHS is we don't just sit there and do the same thing all the time. We're always listening and trying to figure out, okay, the landscape has changed, and now what is doable? What can we actually do? Because we know that the need for affordable housing far outstrips what INHS can do in any given day with the staff that we have, and we want to be very intentional about the needs that we're filling. And I would say, in terms of the landscape of affordable housing, it's not just Tompkins County that's had enormous price increases in terms of the purchase price of manufactured homes. All of the surrounding counties have had a 70 to 100% increase in the sale value since COVID. So we used to be able to get somebody into a house in Chemung County for 100,000-ish, under 100,000 sometimes, and now the market's way up over 200,000. So that's a 5-year increase. I don't know anybody whose income has increased 100% in the last 5 to 6 years, right? So incomes aren't keeping pace with house prices, and that is causing an incredible stressor, let's say, on low to moderate income households, and something that we're continuing to try to think through. How do we help people with those continuing homeownership options, given that the market is changing? So I would say that's, kind of the major things that INHS, our history, what we're doing now, our departments, and as far as I can see it, kind of the basics of the landscape that we're in terms of affordable housing generally, and I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about how the minor home repair and major home repair might work in a community like Lansing? In other words, how do you apply, who's eligible, what could a church like ours do to help assist people stay in their homes as one means of affordability?
Sure. So we run these repair programs. Generally, the major repairs that we do are government funded. So we get some money from the federal government, some money from New York State. We're running 6 to 10 loan sources at any given time, each with their own rules. Environmental bidding requirements, eligibility requirements, paperwork requirements. My job is a lot of people and a lot of paperwork. Amazing amount of paperwork, and we have really good systems to manage all that. But what I will say is there are always circumstances where we can't help. Somebody's house is in a trust and this funder won't let us help if they're in a revocable trust. That somebody's house is in a flood zone, this funder won't even let us put in a temporary ramp unless the person has flood insurance. So we're always running into barriers, and especially with the major repair work, it's very, very regulated. Right now, we're working with someone in Brooktondale who needs a new septic system. We've been caught in a process with the Department of Environmental Conservation for a wetland delineation for the last 12 months, with no sight of that finishing. And that's like sort of the worst case scenario. They threw new rules at us. There's 2 people in New York State that are looking at the wetlands delineation, so you sort of submit it to them and then just keep nudging them and they don't respond forever. And I'm thinking, well, now the septic is going into the wetland. Why do we think this is a good idea? Like, can somebody just exempt the septic replacement from this whole process, please? Because the house is here, the woman's living there. No. So I would say, we get to know for various crazy reasons, and then when we have funding in our minor repair program, we get funding usually there from private sources. So we do a lot of applications to foundations, and that is a program where we use to fix the problems that the government funding won't fix. So if they say you can't put a ramp in a flood zone, then I go to my minor repair pot, and when I have enough money, I take that person off my wait list and I do the ramp in the wetlands, right? So we can't fix every problem, but we're very good at tracking everything. And we're good at remembering the times we couldn't help and then just sort of circling back. So any amount of money, frankly, helps us. Sometimes there's one program that we do emergency repairs for seniors, and another one that's accessibility modifications for folks with disabilities. Neither of those programs will pay for lead paint testing, even though they require it. So having a little bit of flexible funding to do the lead paint testing is like super helpful, even though that's, $600 or $700 a household. I just need to have that in the file, but nobody's gonna pay me to do it. So having a little flexible funding to kind of take care of what we call soft costs or testing costs that the government mandates us to do but won't pay for is very helpful. And so I would say, are very adept at taking all of the sources we have, all the rules we have, and using that funding. So funding for what we call kind of materials or construction costs in our minor repair program allows us to leverage a lot of different sources. We have databases that can help us serve people only in one municipality. So if you decided, hey, we want to fund only the residents of Lansing, we could do that. We have been doing work in Lansing for many years. There are manufactured home communities in Lansing, especially that we're doing work in, as well as some homes on owned land. But as we know, every community kind of has a mix of housing stock, and so there are definitely folks in this community who could benefit from, repair funding. And the way we work through our programs is we try to help people with whatever funding sources we have, and then when we get to know, we keep them on this separate list of, I'll fix it when somebody gives me some money to fix it, And then we circle back to them as quickly as we can, if it looks like it's at all possible to help.
What kind of advocacy can a group like this, trying to help the community understand opportunities for those kind of programs, could you envision for a church group?
Yeah. I have a list of like 20 boring regulatory things that no one will pay attention to me about. I could definitely be like, write a letter about this very specific tweak that somebody could make to a regulation. For instance, please exempt septic systems from your Department of Environmental Conservation delays, or at least hire a bunch more people over there when now everybody's mandated to go through the process. There are many ways to solve a problem, right? So I could give you 5 easy ones to write a letter on if you've got letter writers in the group. I would say also sometimes have volunteer opportunities, cleanup days, that kind of stuff. If folks like getting dirty, that's fun. I'm a gardener at heart, so when they let me out of my office, I will definitely go and clip all the weeds in front of the rental buildings because it's really fun for me. But yeah, so if there are any gardeners in the group, we can send you to our community relations department every, once or twice a year. We have a cleanup day and that's fun. At least I think it's fun. Maybe I don't get out enough. Go ahead.
Hi. So I'm an Ithaca landlord.
Yeah.
I have a 5-unit commercial building and I have a single family home. All are rented to low and middle income. 3 of the units are rented to the Learning Web. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is this, I have kept their rents low and I haven't in the last 5 years raised them up to what would now be the Ithaca, what rents are. But between the taxes and the water sewage and the contractor price, and now one of them is in the new flood zone.
Yeah.
So my insurance just popped up $300 a month.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I'm looking for a resource that I can go and talk about different ideas to where I can keep these people without having to either sell the property or, I'm just not gonna I'm not gonna kick them out and run into Cornell students, but we're underwater right now.
Yeah.
Because we're decent.
Yeah. There are some sources that will help with small rental situations. Usually those are limited to direct rentals. Home Headquarters has, they're a nonprofit out of Syracuse. They're running a New York State funding source that is meant to address the climate resiliency generally, but like flood zone, flood insurance costs partly. And I don't know if that's open to landlords or just open to homeowners, but that would be the first one that comes to my mind. Yeah, that is another change I didn't even mention, happened in 2025. Most of the flats, or a good chunk of the flats of downtown Ithaca, are now in the flood zones, and $300 a month increase in insurance is not shocking if you go from not having flood insurance to having flood insurance, which is a huge affordability issue. So, yeah, that's a nightmare. And there is a community level fix to get to your advocacy question. So part of the flood remapping is, as you know, there are creeks that come down the hill and through Ithaca, and that's usually where the flooding comes from. So there are dredging and other like sort of systematic issues that could potentially get us to a place where the flood zones could be remapped in a better way instead of making things significantly worse. So I would say that would be another like advocacy thing. I know the city is starting to work on that, but it's too late for a lot of folks. And in terms of the health of the overall community, obviously dealing with flooding issues before they become a huge disaster is a great plan. So I would love some voices towards the, let's get that done before we have a crisis, right? Or another crisis, a larger crisis. So yeah, I would say there aren't a ton of resources for small landlords. If you're directly renting to someone and they have Section 8, right, you can get some subsidy and get up to the fair market rent. But if you're renting to a nonprofit, I don't think there are quite the same benefits.
Like, what if I wanted to turn a commercial into like a nonprofit or something? Is there a place I could go to just get some consultation about that? What would you suggest? Like, if I just wanted to learn about different
Ownership options.
ownership options,
Yeah, you're gonna probably want to talk to a lawyer, which is not me.
Yeah,
I know.
sitting there, I'm like, a lawyer maybe?
Yeah. Yes.
Lawyer or CPA, okay.
I think at this time, if there are any other questions, we can take a couple more, and then we're going to transition into a little bit of small group discussion, and maybe we can have a private conversation. Does anybody else have any questions at this point?
I was just wondering, all this sounds amazing, and I've been involved in Asteri stuff through other avenues, and so I wonder what you see with the market landscape and its changes and everything, whether the amazing rental opportunity thing that you guys have going on is more feasible versus the home ownership. Like, do you guys have a dedicated, would you rather be landlords and provide lots of really awesome units, or supporting kind of single family townhome?
We're committed to doing everything that we possibly can do, because there are people who need a rental, they can't fix stuff. You know, the home ownership also comes with, as we know, plowing and water heaters that go out and all sorts of fun things. Trenches you have to dig in your yard on Sunday morning, right? Like, it's not what everybody wants. So we are committed to continuing to provide as much rental housing as we can, but also we understand that homeownership is a long-term stabilizing factor, and we would love to do that. So I would say it's gotten really, yes, everything is what we are trying to do, and everything that we do has costs associated that government funding is not available to cover. That's why our homeownership production has slowed, as much as we hate that. So, you know, if there's somebody here with $1 million check, like, we will go look at a project in Lansing and see if we can create, 16 new units. I would be delighted. That was the gap that we had on the last project. If folks are like, no, I'm in the $2,000 range, then like, let's use that on resident services to support our tenants, or on materials for minor repairs to keep people in their houses, right? We can really use any amount of funding that come to us, and especially when it doesn't, we have so much money with restrictions that when we have something that's flexible, we're really good at using it wisely and making sure that we're supporting whoever that person tells us they want their funding to go towards. So I would say, yeah, anything. Yeah.
Furnish the apartments?
Generally, no, but we work with groups like the Village at Ithaca that will razzle dazzle. When I cleaned out my father-in-law's house, right, like I drove stuff to a resident that they were supporting, and I don't remember if it was even in it. I don't think it was in an INHS apartment. So there's like, generally INHS isn't doing that, but Claire, the social worker that's working with us, will, get people access to furniture through reuse or whatever. So we're doing some work to make sure folks aren't living on an air mattress with nothing else in their houses, but generally homes come unfurnished.
Any other questions?
Well, just in addition to money and advocacy, and we could all use more information about what kind of advocacy would be helpful, is there any other hands-on or way in which INHS could work with a community partner like this organization here?
I have boring mailings on occasion. In addition to, you know, the community cleanup days we have, sometimes we're staffing tables at community events, so just having another person sitting with me while I'm talking to seniors for 4 hours and making sure we're restocked on whatever's on the table is great. So there are opportunities. My colleague, Justina, is the person who does the community relations department, so I will make sure that she's in touch with you all. And if anybody's like, yeah, I wanna do an INHS thing, let us know and we'll put you on our list. Yeah.
I mean, to take that question a little bit further, do you see a possibility of partnering with an organization like ours to support home repair or to support one of your programs, other programs in terms of assisting rentals or building additional units or anything like that?
I would say in terms of the capacity to supervise volunteers on building gigs, we don't have a ton, although we could teach folks to assemble metal ramps, and
Well,
that would be helpful.
What if we
Habitat-
provided that expertise? Like we have people with skills who are contractors or retired contractors who could fill those roles.
In the minor repair program, we might be able to make that work if folks had some time, and we could, you know, basically just talk to me. I'm the director of that department. I'll figure out if we can make it work. It's not something that we've done systematically, mostly because government money requires that you bid things out. So there are, as we've covered, more than one rule about how that happens. But in the minor repair program, we have some flexibility about accepting additional help. I would say in terms of like having staff that is trained and has a model of accepting help. Habitat is building houses currently in Tompkins County, and they do have that kind of a program where they are looking for folks with building skills to work on their builds, and they have a number of houses in process. So I don't want to be greedy and say INHS will take all the help, because I think that really is their model and they're good at that. So.
Okay, so what I'd ask is if you can stay for